Okay. So I'm Dave.
You're on.
I'm on, excellent. So we're going to talk about health and safety, which I know doesn't rock everybody's boat, but it's necessary to be done. I'm not going to talk like a lecture. I haven't got any notes, I haven't got any handouts or anything. I'm just going to kind of cover the broad topic, and then if you've got any questions, you fire them into me and we can answer them, but all in the context of what's happening here. So we don't need to sort of take it and make it massively big, because it's not. A little bit of background, though, on the legislation side, just so you can say you've had it. So although we're volunteers here, and strictly speaking, the overarching legislation is the Health and Safety at Work Act, and you could argue, well, we're not at work. That's fair enough, but it does make sense, and the Health and Safety Executive would expect us to follow the same principles as though they're at work. So if we take that as the overarching thing, the Health and Safety at Work Act, as an organisation, this organisation, so the Share Library, plus now we're amalgamated with the Repair Cafe, and it just covers the fact that as an organisation, we will do everything we can to keep everybody safe during all our activities, and some of the things in the Repair Cafe are going to be more risky than things we do here, because the environments are different and what happens is different. We manage health and safety just by being sensible about things and doing risk assessment. Is everybody happy with the concept of risk assessing? You do it every time you cross the road, don't you? You have a look, see what's coming. The lorry's going to hit you, so the likelihood of it hitting me, well, if I cross in front of a lorry, quite high. If I wait for the lorry to go by, much lower. Who's at risk? Me, if I step out into the curb. And then when the lorry goes by and I do cross the road, then I just keep vigilant and look left and right as I'm crossing the road. If I run across the road, I'm going to increase the risk because there's more likely to be tripping over. If I walk across the road, there's less risk. So that's risk assessment, and that's what we do here as well. So the risk assessments that would be relevant to working in here, what are the risks that might face you here? Here, first of all, what might hurt you?
Something up high.
Sorry?
Something up high.
Something up high. Do you know, that's probably the biggest thing that's going to hurt you. Something up high. And how's it going to hurt you?
Falling on your head.
Falling on your head. So what are we going to do to stop it? What's the best thing to do to stop something falling on your head from up high? Don't store stuff up high. Exactly right. So if you store stuff up high, then you've got to, at some point, reach up for it. And then when you're reaching up for it, then it could fall on you. And if you're, how are you going to reach that baby thing up there? So we take that as a case in point. How do we get it down?
So there's a stool over there that I borrow to stand up and get it down.
Okay, so then you introduce a stool or a step ladder. So now what's the next worst thing that can happen to you while you're reaching up to get the baby thing off the top shelf? Sorry?
The stool breaks.
The stool breaks, and what happens to you? You fall off it. And as you fall off it, you damage yourself. So I once did an investigation into someone who'd fallen off something at work, and it was literally reaching up something about high. And she had stepped on a small step ladder, two-step step ladder, but had to reach across to reach the thing. And in reaching across, she overbalanced, and as she fell over, she hit her shoulder on the corner of a sharp object, smashed her shoulder, knocked herself unconscious, was actually quite seriously injured just by doing that, having to step up and reach across. So what could she have done different? What could the organisation have done for her?
Maybe had somebody monitoring her to make sure she wasn't going to do something silly.
Okay. What she was doing was actually lifting up to store a kind of industrial-sized can of baked beans, because it was in a cafe environment. So she was reaching to put the storage of baked beans up there. So why wouldn't she put it on the shelf down there? Because there's other things on the shelf. And what was on the shelf down there, do you think?
Tissues and lightweight stuff.
Christmas decorations. How often do you use the Christmas decorations? Once a year? So all that Christmas rubbish was down there, and all the stuff they're using every day, which is heavy, is up there. So the obvious thing would be to, A, forget Christmas. That's the best thing, isn't it? Just get rid of all that rubbish. If you're not going to do that, well, put that up top, because that's nice and light and everything else, and put the other stuff down below.
Baby walker never goes out.
Fair enough. But everything that goes up on those shelves is a potential to cause you harm. So where's the heavy stuff?
habits.
And why is that? I'm not looking at you and saying, it's all your fault, Eva.
Yeah.
It's not. It's about just thinking about this.
We've got a limited amount of capacity.
Yeah.
And so, with best will in the world, even if we did actually weigh everything and got the very heaviest stuff on the bottom, there's still going to be some heavy stuff that goes on the middle shelves.
Absolutely.
So I think it just doesn't have to be an acceptable risk.
And sometimes that's the best place for it to be, because rather than having to bend down with this heavy thing, putting strain on your back, actually I just go in like that. And you think, well, that's perfect. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have heavy stuff higher up than lower down, but lower down keeps everything more stable, but then you introduce a new set of risks. Having said all of that, let's just keep it sensible, okay? And as long as the way the shelves are laid out enables people to reach up, reach down, put the lighter stuff at the top, stuff that's unlikely to go out, the baby walker, let's put it up there, out of sight. Not out of mind, but out of sight and out of the way. And then everything else that's going in and out on a regular basis, we'll keep that where it's easy to get to. And then yourself, if you're lifting stuff, just know your limits, what you can and can't lift. So it's basically working at height and manual handling are the two things that are the things most likely to cause people harm in here. Not only putting stuff on and off the shelf, but if you help people out to the car with a larger object, so struggling, trying to squeeze things, being helpful, trying to squeeze something in somebody's car. I'm not saying don't do it, but just be aware of it. And so that's what we do. We risk assess things. So we look at it and we think, can I do this? Can I lift this? Can I lift this? Is it in the right place for me? Do I need help? And if you're working on your own, obviously, a lot of the time that help's not there for you. So it's just thinking about that sort of thing. It's pretty obvious, really, isn't it? Yeah. Are those shells secured to stop them tipping? Probably not. But it would be relatively easy to bolt them one set to the next so they're rigid and they're supporting each other. That's something that might need to be looked at, and Benji might have done that. Has he done it?
Oh, the yellow ones?
The yellow ones.
Yeah.
If they're just bolted together.
Yeah, I think that's sensible. He hasn't done it. But
You could they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be dead easy. Just put a bracket over the top, drill, screw in top of both things, job done. As long as when Benji's doing that, working off the step ladder, doesn't fall off the step ladder, but that's for him.
I must say
That's for him to do. The weight of the stuff is going to make it very
I think
stable.
it's pretty stable at the moment already, but there's no harm doing it if it's an easy thing to do.
Yeah, you just join those together.
I think you're looking at our new shelves, which I've only just registered there. They're definitely not attached to anything at the moment.
No, but it'd be dead easy to quickly fix that to the shelf behind. Yeah. So it's just looking at things and thinking that's what we could do. So if we're looking at regulations, manual handling, it's a set of regulations about those, and then there's working at height, and that's about going up and down step ladders, getting on the little stools and things. And both those regulations, they don't stipulate anything. You're not saying what is the minimum weight you can lift or the heaviest weight you can lift or what the highest height you can go without a safety harness or the lowest. Working at height is anything above the floor. So if I stood on that little thing there, which is like 2 centimetres, I could trip off that. That's ridiculous, but I could. Or I could trip over it. So it's just about keeping your workplace safe through risk assessment. Any questions on that one? No. In relation to manual handling, if you remember light, sort of heavy and light. So on the light side, think about, if I'm going to pick up that box, what is the load? How heavy is that box? So I'm thinking about the load itself. How heavy is it? What shape is it? And everything else. And then I think about me. Am I capable of lifting that load, that box? Looking at it, probably think, yeah. And then where have I got to take it? Because that's the task, L-I-T-E. So the task is move it over there. And then the environment I'm in. Well, nice, dry, clean workspace. If I was carrying one of the heavy boxes to somebody's car out there, then it's a completely different thing, isn't it? I could probably pick this box up, one-handed. But a larger box, carrying it across the car park to help someone put it in their car when it's chucking down the rain, completely different environment. Now, I know that's misspelling of light, because that's L-I-G-H-T, but if we remember heavy and light is L-I-T-E, load, individual, task, and the environment you're working in. Job done. Yeah. Okay, so having fallen off the shelf because we're working at height and we've hurt ourselves, what's the next bit of health and safety we've got to think of?
First aid.
First aid. Okay, so we've damaged ourselves. What are we going to do about it? So how far do we need to go down the route of first aid? This is not a risky environment, is it? Notwithstanding the fact we're not going to fall off because we're not lifting heavy things now because we know how to do that properly. What's the next worst thing that's going to happen to us here?
Cuts.
Falling asleep, falling off the chair because no one's coming in for an hour. Little cuts, paper cuts. It's minor injuries, isn't it? So we don't need to have a trained first aider here. We really don't need that. Is there one in here? One of their staff?
I believe so.
And is there a first aid kit somewhere in here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably a few years out of date now, but I've done that. Yeah.
Breathing, bleeding and bones, isn't it? If you go back all those years, it is breathing, bleeding and bones. Are they still breathing? Are they bleeding to death? And are their bones broken? Well, you're not going to bleed to death from the finger cut. So it's about keeping it sensible. But have we got availability of a first aid kit?
Yes.
Where is it?
In the kitchen area.
And they don't mind us using it. Should we cut ourselves? Or is the question of, I've used a plaster, here's a new one.
Do you think it's worth getting one for this bit so it's more easily?
I think as long as they don't mind us having access to it, then just leave it at that.
Is there a bit of a lot?
No.
So you can always,
So as long as we can always get into the kitchen to get to the loo, then the first aid kit's there and it's fine. And it's just common sense stuff, isn't it?
There's always a telephone in there
Yeah.
for an ambulance.
So probably the worst thing would be, I don't know, get stung by a bee in the summer that flies in the door and you get stung. Fair enough. Or you cut yourself.
Shoo it out of the door.
If you don't shoo it out the door first. Or if there's a bee or a wasp in something that someone's brought the gazebo back and there's a wasp stuck in there and you get stung as you've taken it apart. That sort of thing. But it's only really minor injuries. So the only thing I'm going to say is if we've got access to their first aid kit, that's fine. And as long as everybody knows that there is a first aid kit out the back, that's okay. But the next worst thing that would happen might be what? If you're working on your own and you feel ill. So then we're talking about lone working, aren't we? So what's our lone working procedure? Well, Eva knows that someone's here because of the store open hours and who's here and what time it's going to open and shut. So the maximum length of time you're going to be on your own is not going to be very long. But if an accident were to happen to you, well, if you feel ill, just get on the phone. It is really that simple.
On Saturdays when there's not somebody in there as well. So.
Yeah.
But what's the Saturday open and closing procedure?
10 a.m. I unlock and people know that I'm here, aka Brad or Luke, and then I sit here 2 hours and then...
So if you're not back by 1 o'clock, someone's going to sort of think, where is she? So the worst, if it's Eva on her own, the worst it's going to be on a Saturday is, if the worst thing happened, you came in here and fell over at 10 o'clock, it's going to be 1 o'clock potentially before anyone could find you. But the likelihood of something like that happening is minuscule, but we have got a procedure that will cover it, that someone would look for you in the end. It's not like we're lone working being exposed to risks. Like when I go out and do my day job, which is going and fire risk assessments for people, I go to housing estates all over the place, including big tower blocks in London, and I'm on my own. And some of those places you sort of think, do I really want to be here? But, it's just... Yeah, the irony of the health and safety person getting injured. The irony is not lost on me. But the thing is, we're not operating in those sort of environments, are we? Are we ever going to go out and deliver things to people? Is that on the cards?
That's a Benji responsibility.
Okay. So if Benji ever takes it upon himself to go and deliver on the bicycle, etc., then he's got other issues about going into people's houses and things like that. So we can talk to him about that as and when he does it, if it ever arises.
Home delivery arrangements, I thought.
Yeah, but it's just about that lone working and also the thing about safeguarding, which is the next thing. You go into somebody's house and then you're in there with that person and you're on your own and then something happens and then afterwards they say, oh, that person there came in, stole something, did something, molested me, spoke inappropriate to me, all those things that we've got to be aware of. But Benji and I can have a word if he ever decides that that's where we're going to go. But we're not in that process or that environment. You have got the environment here of during the working day in the week. This is staffed, isn't it? 7 days a week? 5 days a week, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is always somebody else on the premises that you can relate to. Do you let them know when you've opened up? Or do they just assume that you're here?
I don't let them know, they just know when the opening assume that I'm probably in at that.
There's a fairly steady flow of people in and out.
Do they all come in the other door from the other side as opposed to through here?
There are some people that come in that door, some of them come in that door.
I don't think it'd be a bad idea to just let them know that you're here.
Yeah.
And just say, just let you know we're here.
Maybe there's a
Fine.
little notice. Either is in, either is out.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Anything just to let them know so they are aware. Could be useful for you. From a fire point of view, they should have a risk assessment for this building because it's their workplace. They haven't got a fire alarm system, doesn't matter. They don't necessarily need one. But if there's a fire, just walk out the door. You know, that's simple. Call the fire service. Don't think that they necessarily would have called the fire brigade. If there's a fire in here and they're in there, then let them know. So what I would do is, depending on where the fire is, if it's between, let's say that photocopy machine was to catch light and there's smoke coming from it, I wouldn't say go past the machine through the door upstairs. I go out, round, upstairs and let them know, and then they can come down their protected staircase and out, so you don't have to put yourself at risk. So if you're aware of a fire in this building, you think they might not be, let them know, call the fire service, but the most important thing is for you to look after yourselves and make sure you get out. Easy, isn't it? Any questions on that?
No.
Excellent. So, we looked at General Health and Safety at Work Act, which is criminal law. If you do things bad, ultimately people can go to jail and or be fined for breach of health and safety. That's at the extreme end of the scale, but it is criminal law. We've got to obey the law. So, all of us as volunteers have got to cooperate. So if we decide that we do our manual handling risk assessments and we're saying we're going to put all the heavy stuff low down and the light stuff high up and all the rest of it, then just cooperate with that. Just do the sensible thing. We should always be looking around at the stock and how it's stocked to make sure that we're stacking things as sensibly as can be. That makes sense, doesn't it? But it's all about making sure that we don't inadvertently hurt ourselves by avoiding something that we could have avoided. So when you do risk assessments, basically there's a hierarchy. So the first thing is, can you get rid of a risk entirely? So if I don't put the baby walker up there, I don't have to go up there and get it. That's eliminated it. And then it's reduced the risk. So if I only put the light stuff up there, that's better than having the heavy stuff there. That's reduced. That's kind of all we're doing. We're only operating at those scales. When you come down further down, isolate, and training the people and everything else, then you're getting down to the risky end of the scale of things where you're operating in a dangerous environment. So Phil was in the Navy, you know, some things you can't avoid. You can't avoid fighting a war at the time of war, so that's really risky. So that's when the protective gear and the training and the discipline comes in. Or firefighting, it's at that totally different end of the scale. We're at the nice, easy, safe end of the scale, where we can just look, let's eliminate all the health and safety risks we possibly can, and all the things we've got left, let's just reduce them down to a sensible level, which is what we've done. So you'd be happy to say no one needs to wear a hard hat, no one needs gloves, no one needs safety goggles, you don't need safety shoes to work in here, unless we're going to start bringing stuff in that's really big, heavy and clumpy. But we'll look at that at the time. We don't need to be wearing high-vis jackets. We don't need to be wearing them. Straightforward. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? No? Makes sense? Good. Okay. Let's just talk very briefly about the cafe environment where we do the repair cafe sort of work. If any of you like to volunteer there?
Yeah, I turn up for everything.
Okay, so there's other things because it's a setting out of a room, so the manual handling gets a bit more involved. But also, anyone can be involved in the repairs themselves with a skill.
Not really my
No. Okay. That's just something for Benji to consider then with the volunteers about their doing things that might be potentially dangerous. So if you're not going to volunteer in that capacity, no need to worry too much. What do we do about people who come in and hire something? What do we do about telling them about the item that they've hired, if there's any safety implications? I.e., if the girl's just taking a shredder, don't stick your fingers in it, would be an obvious thing, but do we tell her, don't stick your fingers in the shredder?
So there's a borrow agreement which says various stuff like don't do anything silly with it that's going to hurt yourself, and that's your own risk. Read the instruction manual carefully before you use anything and all of that stuff. There's a couple of things that I do show them how to use, just like this is how you snap that on, but not everything.
I mean, to a certain extent, surely we're in the same territory as Argos and Amazon.
Yeah.
I mean, so
buyer beware.
Responsibility to how you choose to use it, because we can't control somebody using a device in a way that it was never intended to be used for.
No. So I'm just thinking though, the limit we need to go is to, let's take the shredder as an example. So the girl's coming in and take the shredder out. So don't stick your fingers in the shredder. Who on earth in their right mind would stick their fingers in a shredding machine?
But it might remind them that if they've got kids around,
if they've got kids around,
leave it plugged in when your kids are around.
Yeah. Or if the paper gets caught in there, unplug it before you try to unjam it. You know, just maybe. So the question is, are you happy with using this thing that you're just borrowing? As you get the health and safety agreement, have you got any questions about it? Be safe. Out it goes. So it's things like the gazebo, isn't it? Quite easy to pinch your finger and you're putting that up and down. Or the steamers with this hot steam coming out. Well, just don't look down the end of the thing when the steam's coming out. All really sensible, but not always done. Things with steamers, quite often people might do things like taking a radiator cap off a car. There are times where those steamers get really hot and it's quite easy just inadvertently undo a pipe, disconnect a pipe, and hot steam comes out and you've got a scald that you didn't need. So it's just with those more tricky items, just as you get them to sign the disclaimer, say, are you happy with using this? You know, just follow common sense precautions, just so we can say, yeah, we did bring it to the attention of the girl who's taken the thing out. Who would ever stick their knife in a toaster to get the toast out that's sort of caught? No one's ever done that, have they?
My boss does.
I do it every day, probably. When you think, oh, it's still stuck in there, stick the knife in and take it out. Wouldn't, yeah, and ideally, you know, I should think, well, okay, I should unplug it, pick it out, but stick it in, take it out. No, okay, there's 240 volts, I'm just sticking this knife in. But that's my risk in my home, isn't it? And I can do that if I want to. I wouldn't advocate anybody else does it. And the same with a shredder. Don't stick your hand in the shredder when you've got a paper jam. If it's a paper jam, turn it off, unplug it, and then look at it. Or, you know, just bring it back to us. And we'll do it, because we don't want you hurting yourselves. So we have got a responsibility to the people that come in with the goods that we give them. So it's just being aware of that. What's probably the most risky thing we've got? We've got any hedge trimmers and things?
Well, we've got hedge trimmers, but we've also got the garden trimmer,
right.
shredder.
Okay, branches
like
and things.
Shredder.
Yeah.
That you can get a significant part of your body into, I think.
So with those sort of more risky items, we have got to say, look, just be careful when you're putting there's a limit to the size of branch you'll go to. Don't try and put a tree trunk in there and ram it down, because it's over capacity and it's going to get stuck, and then you're going to put your fingers in it, you're going to get caught. You know, really don't do that. The strimmers, so then you've got electric cords.
Yeah.
So, you know, cable management, mind your cable, where's the cable, keep the cable behind you.
String through that. They string through it, hedge trim through their cable.
Yeah, so it's easy, very easy with a hedge trimmer to catch the cable in the blades and chop the cable while you're working. So it's just reminding people about when you're doing this, just be careful, manage your cable properly. You know, ideally put it in a circuit breaking device so that...
I think we've got those now. We did get those, no? I didn't get those.
It wouldn't be a bad idea to put one out.
Lend it out with the item, let's say, now it's covered.
So this goes between...
I thought some time ago that...
I nearly ordered it and then I don't think I did.
I think you ought to. For those...
Order a couple, it's not that expensive.
Yeah, those larger electrical items we lend out, put one of those in so they've got it. So
RCD plugs.
Yeah. And that's just about, we can show that we've been sensible and responsible to the people who are coming in to say, look, we're giving you this...
Every chance to get it right, aren't we?
Every chance to get it right, yeah. And if you fail, your fault then, isn't it? You know, because what we've got to do is we've got to be able to show that if somebody has an accident with the hedge trimmer and someone gets seriously injured, then where are they going to come to? They're going to come back here, aren't they?
I think the only way they would be able to come back here is if we provided them with a faulty device, if they chose to use it in a way that it wasn't intended to be used for, I think that'd be something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what your public liability insurance is for anyway, is to cover that sort of stuff that might happen.
It is, but whether they, it's that some people they've got their mindset that they'll always look to blame somebody else.
Oh, true.
Even though I've balanced on this ladder and I've used a hedge trimmer to cut that overhanging branch, and I'm leaning like this, and as I fell off, the chopping blade cut through my leg and then electrocuted me when it went through the cable. Now that's all that person's fault. But if there's any way that some people can then say, oh, my husband died because of you, because of your machine, then we've just got to be able to say, no, look, this is what we did. We lent them this thing, or we hired this thing out, we told them about it, we asked them to sign the thing off.
It's all done. So.
Yeah, so we're insured.
I mean, it's a case of just doing what is reasonable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Taking reasonable precautions.
Reasonably practicable is what the HSE say. And it's reasonably practicable to hire something to someone and say, are you happy with using this? Yes, just be aware that you keep yourself safe, manage your cable, don't do this, don't do that. Over to you, and away they go. And if you've got the signed bit of paper for the hire agreement, he signed it. End of. And that's as far as we need to go. We're not in a risky environment here, are we? I can't ever I can foresee a few things happening, but it's unlikely that it's going to happen. So, one temptation might be that someone hires something, an electrical item, to do a job, and then tomorrow they do the job and it's chucking it down the rain. And, I've only got this for a day, so I'll work with this electrical thing outside in the open air when it really wouldn't be sensible to. So they put themselves at risk because they've got the pressure to use the thing while they've got it, so they can bring it back the same day. So they don't have to pay another £2 for a hire fee or something. But that's not on us. It's not on us. But that's the sort of things that people do. But we have got the insurance. We've got public liability insurance, which covers us to a certain degree about people out there being stupid. We've covered ourselves by saying we've taken all precautions we can. And part of that is having a little chat like this.
Something.
Anything that is quite tricky or maybe dangerous to use, I've made sure that there's a manual that they can access, so they can even access that.
Yeah. So if you signpost into the manual, so you say, look, before you operate, if you've got any questions, go on YouTube or whatever, and you can see how this thing operates. Do that before you start. Over to them. Give them all the information that it's reasonable for us to give them. And we're just helping them out. That's it. Yeah? Is everyone okay with that? It is simple, it is straightforward. Don't need to worry too much. Just keep yourself safe. It is common sense. So to summarise, come in here, let them know you're here, so that you're just aware both ways. From a fire point of view, if there's a fire, you let them know, they let you know. But from you, just go outside. Call the fire service, 999. Don't assume they've done it. And then stay at the building. From slips, trips, falls, let's minimise those by making sure all the stock is safely secured, and we've thought about where we're stocking things in terms of lifting and putting things on shelves, etc. If there's an accident, we've got access to a first aid kit for minor cuts and bruises and stuff. If anyone does have an accident, other than a small cut finger, something slightly more than that, let Eva know to let me know and or Benji, and if necessary we'll come and look at it and see if there's anything we need to do to stop that similar thing happening again. But I can't imagine anything would. Yeah? Marvellous.